So now we're getting to a little bit of MLB, which it's finally amazing to get a little bit of MLB back on this show because...
Had to wait for the moves to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, after the World Series and, the World Series rant, a lot of them, MLB's been a little bit quiet. We talked about David Price the last time we were on the air, but free agency really stepped up the last couple of weeks. We'll start locally. We'll start with the Yankees, who traded for second baseman Starlin Castro. They sent Brendan Ryan and Adam Warren to the Cubs. And the Cubs, of course, they've really been stacking up their bullpen during this whole thing, too. So give me the Yankee fan perspective. What are your thoughts on Starlin Castro?
I'm disappointed to see Adam Warren go. I really liked him. I thought he was...
I think every Yankee fan is.
Kind of in that, Alfredo Aceves jack-of-all-trades role out of the bullpen. Could do just about everything. I really liked him. However, to get Starlin Castro, a player who is under contract for the next 4 years, and, he's controllable, he's got a lot of ability, and he can swing the bat well. He plays good defense. He's a nice double play combo with Didi. I don't even know.
Very excited to see that, too.
I don't even know if he has scratched the surface of how good he can be yet, according to who you listen to. So I like the deal. Listen, you give away Brendan Ryan and a bullpen pitcher for a starting player. And with the Yankees' needs and the fact that their second basemen were awful last year, you say what you listen. I get it. Dustin Ackley came up down the stretch there and did some nice things, but let's not kid ourselves here. None of them were everyday players.
No.
All right.
And you take a look at Starlin Castro too, who didn't start out great last year. He started out as a starting shortstop, ended up getting benched, found an opportunity at second base, ended up doing very well there. Played very nice defense at second base.
He found a new home there. I mean, it renewed his time with them.
Yep, and ended up hitting very well down the stretch, going into the playoffs. Even in the playoffs, I think he maybe would have been one of those key guys, or I wouldn't say key guys, but one of those like shining stars in the Mets series, if there were any to name at all. I think he may have been one of them on offense and defense.
Yeah, well, I remember he had a few mammoth homers against the Cardinals.
Oh my God.
A couple big ones.
He was the point example of every time the Cardinals pushed them, he led the example of we're going to do it better.
Right, because I remember particularly the game that I was watching. I watched Game 3, and the Cardinals cut the lead to 5-4. I
believe they took the lead 5-4.
They never led in the two games in Chicago. They led Game 3. I'm sorry, you're right. They led Game 4. They never led Game 3. Hayward got it to 1. Castro came out, hit a home run.
Which is another one we got to talk about.
Yeah, then Bryant hit another home run. I mean, a couple moonshots.
I remember the Starlin Castro home run in Game 3, like you said. It was early in the game. Maybe it was the 5th inning. Castro's first pitch. The first thing out of Ernie Johnson's mouth
and that ball is crushed.
Was like, oh man.
Yeah.
Like, one of those TV announcers where you could just look at it yourselves. On the radio, it's different. We all know that, but. Yeah. You're right. Starlin Castro was the lead example of anything you can do, we can do better.
Right.
And, you saw that constantly in the St. Louis series. Hell, you even saw it in Game 1 when John Lester lost against St. Louis.
Yeah.
Game 2, you saw it. Game 3, you saw it. And Game 4, the exclamation point. Unfortunately, it was the best thing to come out of the Cubs season. Now, I'll take it as a big Mets fan. I was very happy with the NLCS, but at the very end of that NLCS, about 10 minutes or 20 minutes later, I'm like, the poor Cubs.
Yeah.
But the Cubs had a good offseason. They get Brendan Ryan. They get Adam Warren. And we're in December. It's not over yet.
And they get Ben Zobrist.
We start off again with Ben Zobrist. He signs 4 years with the club to replace Starlin Castro at second base. I think it's a good move. He's back under his old manager in Joe Madden, which I think, of course, is always good with a player. We saw that with Curtis Granderson when Kevin Long came back to be the batting coach of the Mets. It didn't start out great. It ended up being fabulous move, especially for Curtis Granderson and any other ex-Yankees on the team. But you take a look at the deal for Ben Zobrist, and
it's a lot of money, but I don't mind it.
A lot of money, but I don't mind it either. And you know what? It was something that the Mets weren't able to give him, but the Cubs literally came out of nowhere and just took him. I did not see the Cubs in this deal at all, but you know what? The Cubs, they get a valuable second baseman, a guy who's great on defense, had a great postseason. So
I like the Zobrist move, and I know that's hard to believe. I mean, he's a 35-year-old that's getting a lot of money, but I feel like he's a little bit more proven of an entity.
Hey, he's a great defensive
player. I
like
the addition from they needed a kind of veteran presence, and that's what he brings. And he can play just about anywhere on the field. That's huge with him. I think Hayward's a really really solid player. Excuse me, not slight. Really solid player. He's going to hit 280. He's going to drive in, 70, maybe 80 runs. He may hit 20 homers if you get him going the right way. They brought him in for defense and his ability to run the bases, which is fine. Listen, he had a really good year in St. Louis, and he deserves to be paid for it. but I don't think he's a $184 million player.
I have to agree. We'll go right into that, too. Jason Hayward signing, I believe, was it an 8-year deal? 184 million?
I think,
9-year?
yeah.
I got to fact check
Whatever it is. But
either way,
it's too much money. I think it's not the worst contract. I know we started with Price a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that was the worst one.
No, it's not. It's not even close.
Which one, Price, or which one was worse?
No,
Price
the
or...
worst contract of the offseason is Cueto.
Oh, yeah, well, we haven't even got
we'll
to that
get to
yet.
that.
We'll get to that real quick. I was
Cubs.
saying out of the two between Price and Hayward. Like, Hayward's a great player, don't get me wrong, but to me, I
would actually pay. I'm more willing to pay Price the money than I am Hayward.
I feel like the Cubs were paid him the way the Braves saw him when he first came up. Is like you said, like we've been talking in class the last couple weeks, like the next Willie Mays and all that stuff. That's what I feel like the Cubs have been paying Jason Hayward as.
Yeah, really, I mean, the pay is based on his sabermetric numbers and what he does, and I'm not a big believer in that. So for me, I didn't think that it was, a good deal. But we'll see. Listen, I think the Cubs did a lot of good things that made their ball club better. They needed a defensive outfielder like Hayward with Schwarber,
agreed,
and Soler, two guys who can play a single into
Fowler
a triple.
on his way out,
right? And Fowler gone. You needed to bring him in, so I don't mind it. Getting back to the locals. I know Met fans aren't thrilled right now, and I understand why. There should be more of an investment made.
There should be more. I think it's a great start, and we'll start out, obviously, with that. I think there's more that needs to be done, but Neil Walker and Asdrubal Cabrera, two great starts.
Particularly Walker.
Yes.
I don't dislike Cabrera, but Walker, he's got 25 home run power. He can drive in about 85
He's a very
runs.
similar player to Daniel Murphy. Yes, he's had about 10 more.
A little bit better, really.
A little bit better, about 10 more home runs this year. And, of course, the biggest one of them all, he plays better on defense.
Right.
Much better
that's
on
my
defense.
Biggest thing.
And that's what the trade was about.
Yeah.
And you know what was funny? Jon Niese on his way out basically ripped the team on Twitter saying, I'll appreciate the defense of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And this is why I love Chris Carlin.
You know what? But
Chris
maybe
Carlin
he should have pitched better.
Exactly. Chris Carlin went off on SNY. I'll show you the clip during the break because I think I have it. But Chris Carlin went off on this guy. And you know what? It was almost like his same personality when I met him 2 weeks ago in class. Literally, it all came out. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But, for Jon Niese to rip his old team, a team that he's called a home for at least, I'd say, 8 or 7 years. You take a look at ripping the team. Oh, man, I'll appreciate the better defense. Let's not forget he only had one winning season, and that was in 2012.
When they were terrible.
When the Mets, I think, were 26 games off of 500.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up, we have a caller on the line, so we have to answer the phone. Coming up, we'll continue our discussion with MLB offseason and all that stuff. And, of course, our picks at 7 o'clock. Little NBA, NHL before that. SMC Sports on 90.3 FM. 973-655-4256 is the number to call. Sean McChesney and Nick Flaherty. Back after this.
Hi, this is Ed Helvey, founder of Montclair State Radio way back in 1966. And you're listening to 90.3 FM WMSC, Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Still the voice of Montclair State.
Makes you feel happy like an old-time movie. I'll tell you about the magic and the free your soul, but it's like trying to tell.
Back here on SMC Sports, 13 minutes past the 6 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney and Nick Flaherty on WMSC, 90.3 FM. We are taking you up to 8 o'clock today, so it's going to be a nice 4-hour show. So our picks are not at 6, they are at 7 for those who normally tune in at 6 for our picks because they're so entertaining. So we'll stick with...
Some weeks are better than others.
Some weeks are better than others. I didn't even make picks last week, but I know if I did, I was going to be awful.
I went 8-8.
Yeah, I
terrible.
I forgot to make my picks last week, but no big deal. I knew I would have did bad anyway with the teams I basically probably would have picked. So we'll stick with the MLB offseason for a minute, and we were discussing, Jon Niese being traded to Pittsburgh for Neil Walker. And now, again, Jon Niese, he basically rips his team on Twitter saying, I'll appreciate the better defense. But the point I made before the break, let's not forget you only had one winning season with the team. You went 13-12.
It's nothing to do with defense.
Yeah.
The guy can't pitch.
He can't
Let's just
pitch.
call it like it is, people.
Exactly. And not to mention, it's like you can't get past the 5th inning without getting into trouble unless it's like, it's a full moon outside.
He's the Mets' Ivan Nova. It's 3 good innings, and then the rest of it's awful.
My personal opinion, this trade has been 7 years too long. I
Yeah.
never liked Jon Niese on this team. Again, even in 2008, his rookie year, 2009, one of his more promising years, he never had a winning record. And Craig Carton said it better in the summer. It doesn't matter how you're pitching now. Your season ends with a losing record. You had a bad season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the way you got to look at it. And that's the way the
Agreed.
Mets haven't looked at it. Now they can afford to look at it because they're like, we just won the National League pennant and got embarrassed in the World Series. We need to be better. And to be better, this guy has to go. We got to get somebody in return.
Yeah, so I like Walker. Cabrera's a nice little crafty signing.
like 'em both.
think it opens the door to trade Tejada and trade Flores for some bullpen help.
Oh,
or
they're keeping Flores. They want him to play a little bit of first base next year. Why, I don't know, but I just read that on Mets.com the other day.
I
wouldn't
don't
know
even
why.
have an intelligent answer for that. This is, I'm gonna be honest with you,
I don't
Sean.
either.
I am trying very hard to still say that the Mets are gonna continue to be good, but they got to do something.
It's decisions like that makes you think. I get
That's
it.
what bothers me. Okay,
I get it.
and I think these are nice little moves. I like Jerry Blevins too. It's a nice move.
Jerry Blevins, I like the Cologne signing. Kadai retired.
Okay,
There's your
but
money
hold
right
up
there
here. $7.5 million for Portola Colon.
for 1 year.
But $7.5 million. You're not going to spend the $7.5 on a player who can help the team. For $7.5 for the fifth starter. For the
You got a point.
fifth starter.
You got a point, but at the time he's only there before Wheeler gets back.
If the White Sox gave him $7.5 million to pitch out of the bullpen or anything, because they have no pitching, fine. Anyone who has no staff. But the Mets have 4 aces. You could give Doug Fister a non-roster training camp invite
That part's true.
to see if he could make the team. And if he could, you might get a really nice fifth starter. I don't know
get the
why.
signing.
7.5 for a guy who's 42, who went 14-12, and I like Cologne.
Well, you also
come
forget
on.
you also forget that when Wheeler's going to come back in July, he's going to be the guy out of the bullpen in a bullpen that is just non-existent.
I'm not
No.
even sure if Wheeler will be here. He might be the trade bait.
He could be, but
You
as
have
for
to
right-
move someone.
As for
eventually.
right now, Cologne is the guy to set up Wheeler, and if Wheeler
get that.
goes,
I get it.
Cologne is going to stay as the fifth starter.
But
So I get what you're saying.
7.25.
It could go
You could
either
have
way.
given the. I would, but yeah, I understand it. You're familiar with him, but I mean, he's 42. You could have brought anyone in. You could have brought in. You could have tried for Mike Leake. Excuse me. I'm not saying 7.25 would have been enough, but you could. I'd rather you spend the
Mike
money
Leake's
on.
currently in a bidding war right now.
Yeah, I know, but I'd rather you just go out. Why are you spending money on a 42-year-old? That's over the hill. And yes, he still contributes, but I mean, really, 7.25 for 42-year-old Cologne,
No, I get what you're saying,
who
but
had an average year and helped you out of the bullpen. That's great. I understand.
his
but-
$7.5 million better get him a triple this year. So
I
help
mean,
me God.
exactly. What you want it for a pinch hitting ability? I just don't get it. It's moves like that. It's moves like we're going to keep Flores and put him at first. They need
Now that
other
I shook my
pieces.
head, I'm like, why? Just why?
They need a center fielder. Juan Lagares is not the everyday center fielder. For this team.
Absolutely not.
There's no way. Okay, so they need another bat to go. Okay, Walker's not bad. You have Conforto, who's going to play every day, right?
He is now.
He has to.
He was going to without Kadire retiring
He had to anyway. Kadire, listen, that was another waste of money. All right, they overpaid for a 35-year-old.
They overpaid him so he could hit behind Wright, but when Wright gets hurt
Yeah.
the first week of the season, supposedly 7 days, and then all of a sudden it's career threatening. Kadire's got nothing to do on the team.
But what was Kadire ever going to do?
Exactly.
Hit 320. Great. He's not a homer hitter. He does not hit home runs. He could drive in runs if people are in front of him, but I mean, really here, they need to make an impact move. I have a friend of mine who's a huge Met fan, okay? And his whole thing with the subject is, if you want to sit there and say, we will invest when the fans come back and we win something, okay? They win the East, the National League pennant, the fans come out and support the team down the stretch and into the playoffs, right? They raise the ticket prices. Fair enough. I understand that. They have a right to raise prices.
That's the only part I'm mad about.
They raise the prices, and that's fair enough because they have to pay for all
fair.
this.
Absolutely.
But reward the fans with the product.
Exactly.
Okay? I get it. They have a great staff, and they'll be in a lot of games. They're not going to get blown out many times. But you're going to go back to the same mess you had before you brought these people in to make an impact.
Oh yeah, you're gonna go back to June of last year before Cespedes
You
walked in.
replaced Daniel Murphy with a slightly better version of him. You replaced Tejada and Flores with an older version of them. You're going to put Flores at first. Why?
Why?
What does that do to Duda? Where does Duda go?
Exactly.
That does nothing. Duda has to play because
Well, they
he's one
said
of the
he's
few
going to get
power
time
hitters.
at first base. I didn't say he was going to start. They said he's going to give him
but
time.
I just don't. I mean,
I don't get it either. I agree.
What good is it to sit down a player who can bring you back something in a trade. Nothing great, but nonetheless, okay. They need bullpen arms, right? How many times have we gone over this? They need bullpen arms.
No, you're right. Flores and Tejada got to go.
Flores does nothing.
Actually, Tejada can stay as the backup.
To sit and rot on the bench. I don't get it. I don't even understand why you do that.
Yeah.
You could get return on the investment there. So they need to do. I'm not saying they have to make a drastic move and overpay for someone.
You gotta wonder here. Flores showed his value in the playoffs too. When Tejada went down with a broken leg, Flores had to step up to be the everyday starting shortstop. And you know what? You may have won the National League pennant. You may have made the World Series, but I'm sorry, Wilmer Flores really wasn't involved in it.
No.
He had a couple of key hits in Chicago, but that was it.
He was good down the stretch, and he seems like
he played good defense.
Seems like a great guy. Okay, we all felt for him with the whole trade thing. Okay?
The whole trade that never happened.
But enough is enough. Okay, he's not that special of a player. He's a .250 hitter who could get better, but is he going to make the difference now? Clearly, they don't believe in him. They've brought in two people to play his job.
Yep.
So I don't see the point in keeping the guy.
At the same time, though, and this is completely irrelevant. Obviously, the fans are always going to be behind this guy because you know what?
Hooray.
We found out what Wilmer Flores thinks about this team.
Yankee fans loved Bubba Crosby.
Yep.
No one cares about Bubba Crosby.
Exactly.
No one cares right now.
At the same time, and again, completely irrelevant.
Yankee fans love Shelley Duncan.
When
it's true.
You're right.
Shane Spencer.
When Wilmer Flores went on the field in July thinking he was going to be traded, we found out right away what he thinks about that team, and that's great. And thank you for the season that you put up for us. You know what? And I was in Virginia when he hit the walk-off home run, and when he did that, I said, and we were still two back, I said, we are winning the East. There is no way we are losing this thing now.
I get
and
you.
he was the one that started it, but you're right. It's time to let go. It's time.
I mean, he's not, and I'm not trying to, put him down here, okay?
No, he's a great player.
I was at the Range game the other night, okay, and the person I went to the game with was disappointed that Cam Talbot didn't get the opportunity to play, and my father had said to me, really, why didn't Edmonton let him play? And I said, Dad, he's not Eddie Jockman, okay? He's not Mike Richter coming back to play the Rangers. They're going to honor him and let him play.
Exactly.
He's a backup.
He's the backup goalie. You can't just play him because
Wilmer Flores is a fine player. But he's not Mike Piazza, okay? He's not David Wright or anyone else for that matter.
He's not Jose Reyes when he won the batting title either.
He's a decent little ball player who plays good defense. And on the right team with the right lineup that can hit, he's fine. Put him in Chicago. They wouldn't mind having him with the Cubs right now.
They don't need him now.
But you get my point.
Maybe Tampa needs a shortstop now.
Yeah, that's real thrilling. Let's go to Tropicana Field and play with four guys who are going to be traded next week anyway.
Exactly.
Now, my point is, on the right team, he fits very nicely. He's a good defensive player. You could plug him in and out. But on this team, he doesn't. It does them no good to be like, oh yeah, we're going to put you on the bench. You'll play for Lucas Duda. Listen, okay, this whole playing people out of position thing, that solves nothing. Okay, A-Rod was afraid to pick up a glove last year. Okay, they tried to get the whole first base thing.
Oh, did you see him in spring training? He was awful.
I watched it. That's exactly. It was garbage. that was as I drink my Diet Coke here in honor of Francesa.
Fellas, he's really got a Diet Coke.
I really do. I'm not even kidding.
But
folks.
no, you're right. And going back on a Cam Talbot example, it's like, yeah, you know what? He did a lot of great things for the Rangers last year. How long was Lundqvist out last year with that injury? What, 2-3 months?
Cam Talbot is a better example. He's even he deserves more than even a Wilmer Flores does.
But how long was Lundqvist out? 2-3 months? With that injury, maybe 4?
Like 2 months. 2 months. The better part of 2 months.
Cam Talbot played lights-out hockey, but at the same time, you go into Edmonton as a backup. They're not going to honor you with the Garden because, you know what, Lundqvist went down, and you helped the team. And don't get me wrong, Cam Talbot is one of the reasons they won the President's Trophy last year. He played lights-out hockey, but at the same time, your role sticks no matter where you go.
The Oilers do not owe him the opportunity to play. The business is winning, okay?
Yes.
And if the Mets are in the business of going back to the World Series and being able to score runs for this overpowering pitching staff, they either have to be willing to spend the money, which they haven't spent in years, okay? Kadire was wasted money. They were better off throwing it down a toilet bowl. Let's be honest here.
No, you're right.
Okay? So instead, they're going to spend $7.25 on the fifth starter. They're going to pay Cabrera a small amount and trade for Walker. That's it. They gave away picks for Cespedes, who we knew they weren't bringing back.
Yep.
But you know what? At this point, with Cespedes still on the market, They at least need to make a run at it.
They got to try.
And if not Cespedes, then Dexter Fowler.
Or Denard Span.
Someone. No Span.
Well, no.
Span.
Span if you can't get Fowler. I understand, and I don't want him either.
Span's a disaster.
I don't want him either, but it looks like that's where they're going.
I just think you have to do something. Fowler doesn't solve much, okay? He's another leadoff hitter. This team has 3 leadoff hitters.
Exactly.
This solves nothing. I get it, the Wilpons, and you say what you want about Bernie Madoff.
Coupons, you mean?
Right. Then sell the team because you owe it to these people, okay? The Met fans have been... Listen, I give Met fans a ton of credit because through these rough couple of years, they have still gone. Not in huge numbers, but they've gone nonetheless, right?
Oh, I've gone to at least a couple games every year.
The Yankees were average last year and in the heat of a wild card race, and they couldn't sell out Yankee Stadium, okay? And that's how annoyed Yankee fans were by the product.
I don't even think Yankee Stadium was sold out for the wild card game.
It was.
It was?
It was a sellout.
All right, then they
no.
just weren't loud then.
No, it was loud in the first inning, but when you walk the first 4 batters in the second, it's not going to be very loud, is it?
No, it is not.
They made everyone sit on their hands. When you have 3 hits all night, there's no game.
Exactly.
It was that awful to sit through. That's how average it was and I get it. It's relative to Yankee fans. Yankee fans are great. You're used to the winning, the spending. That's whatever. You still owe it to your fan base, okay? And when the Met fans came back and this city was swept up in them, okay? I wasn't one of them, but there were Yankee fans who were rooting for the Mets. That's how this city.
That's how it got.
Right. That's how this town.
And that was 2006 too. And even when the Yankees and the Mets finished with the same record.
Right.
But then the Yankees, of course, got embarrassed by Detroit, and they were like, all right, I would really love to see the Mets win the National League pennant here.
Right.
Screw St. Louis.
I just think they're doing the wrong thing by the people that love this team, okay? And after the run they put together, there's no reason to not build on it.
Exactly.
If
you've got a shot at Cespedes, damn it, go for it.
You have 4 aces, okay? Arizona's got 2, and that's considered great. Right? They got Shelby Miller and Zach Greinke.
Oh, Arizona just became relevant.
In 48 hours, they got 2 of the best pitchers in the league.
In 48 hours, they became relevant again.
They went from not even cellar dweller, really. They were like a 500 team last year, but they went from
not really.
From 3rd place to potential 1st place in the span of 2 days.
Oh, I think on paper they win this division now.
And the Mets, and we'll get into the Diamondbacks as we go here, but the Mets are not, you sit here and you say, well, we won the division last year. But you weren't winning the division until you made the moves you made. They were not going. I don't even care. No one can tell me Kelly Johnson, Juan Uribe were carrying this team to the division. No way.
I still think without Cespedes, they had a shot, but it wouldn't have been as big as it was.
I don't think they would have won it. Maybe they would have had a chance.
I think, and I even said it when Cespedes was here, I think it came down to the last week against Washington. And we saw what happened the last weekend against Washington. The Mets got pummeled.
If you don't do anything here, and Washington's done some nice little things. They've tinkered a bit with their squad, and they've got a new manager who I like. I like Dusty Baker.
I like him too. The problem is, it's like Dusty Baker's a great guy, and I looked at his stats the other day before we go to the break. 93, 95, 96, 97 win seasons. But when he gets into the playoffs,
I get that. But
he's not a successful manager. But you're right. They needed somebody who could separate those egos.
A loose guy, okay? He runs a not so tight ship, and that might be a bad thing. Who knows with those personalities? But personally, I believe you stick with it, and he's a good personality to have in this case, right? Because he's a looser guy. There's pressure on this team,
right?
I think
after what happened last year, and
so many of them outside of Harper had their worst career year ever.
Oh, Jonathan Papelbon really separated the locker room, and going off that point, 2002 San Francisco Giants, a team that won the National League pennant and was literally the prime example of the Mets in 2015.
They were laden with superstars.
Exactly. That team had Barry Bonds and Jeff Kent, who hated each other on that
and
team.
Rich Aurelia and all these different players that were really good players.
And Dusty Baker separated those egos. He made them think that they weren't superstars. That's why that team came together and won so many games. Ended up getting the World Series. Yes, they fell short in Game 7 in Anaheim, but he was the reason that team got that close. Now, that's been almost...
You look at what he did with the Cubs. To me, the Cubs job is the best job he's ever done. They went from last place. They lost 100 games to the National League Championship. For the first year, yes, it was great.
For a season that he didn't get to the World Series, that is his best success. But obviously, you have to go with the year he made it to the World Series.
I just think it's the right move. And I think if you're the Mets and you're sitting here saying, well, we'll just do it again like we did last year because
You're
the
not going to
Nationals
do
are
it without
getting
one
their,
more bat.
will get in their own way. You're banking on too much to go wrong again. Okay, Miami might even be a little better this year. Who knows?
I don't know.
Well, they're tinkering
With the coaches
Listen,
they have, maybe. My dad just texted me, let Cespedes go, and yes, Mets would have made it. I agree Mets would have made it, but if you got a shot, get Cespedes. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I get it. Cespedes put a sour taste in everyone's mouth.
Oh, he did.
But I don't think this team is better right now than it was at the end of it last year.
I think the Mets would have made it very close without Cespedes. And again, last point before we go to the
Probably.
break. They would have made it very close and probably would have won the division, I think, by the skin of our teeth. But without Cespedes, I don't think that the team would have won it that easily.
There's no National League championship. There's no,
I think there's a National League championship without him. I do. I really do. He didn't do much in that playoff
they couldn't
series.
hit. They couldn't hit their own body weight as a group.
In the National League Championship Series?
No, I'm saying I don't know if they would have beat LA. I know he wasn't great in the playoffs. Bless you there.
Thank you.
I know he wasn't great in the playoffs, but I'm sorry. They may have won the division. That's fine. But I think it's a stretch to say they would have. His presence changed things, okay? He made Murphy, in my eyes, better.
That's
He made Wright better. And I get it.
I agree with that point. I think his presence helped them set everything up. I'm just saying he didn't do much in the playoffs. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Fair enough. But I don't know if they even would have been as successful as they were.
At that point, without him in the playoffs, you're right. I really can't say anything about that.
That's what I'm saying.
For just what he had done in the playoffs, besides the one home run, bat flip of the 48 hours before Jose Bautista had his. Other than that, he didn't do much in the playoffs. But I can agree with you. Without him on that team, I think the Mets barely win the division, and who knows what would have happened.
It would have been very
that.
hard to win the playoffs.
I think it would have been very hard to win the pennant without his presence. 31 minutes past the 6 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports. When we come back from the break, we'll get to the rest of the deals that have been happening across the country. We'll get into a little NHL, NBA, and our picks at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Sean McChesney, Nick Flaherty on SMC Sports. Back after this. And 36 minutes past the 6 o'clock hour, you're listening to SMC Sports on 90.3 FM, the final SMC Sports of the fall semester here at Montclair State. You are listening live on 90.3 FM, online at WMSCRadio.com, and on the Live 365 app. Sean McChesney and Nick Flaherty in the studio, so we've had a pretty packed show so far. I'm actually surprised we're still going at this rate. We had 2 hours of NFL.
A lot to talk about.
We're still on MLB free agency. We just had a long discussion of the Yankees and Mets on what the Mets and Yankees should do for the 2016 season. We will get into the rest of the moves.
Be better. How about that?
That's a good one.
Be better.
I think, we also have MLB, NBA, and NHL to get to as well. Picks at 7 o'clock for the Week 15 NFL season. So there's a lot to get to still with about an hour and a half left in the show. So much, we decided we're going till 8 o'clock tonight. So, fellas, if you haven't tuned in from 4 to 7, don't worry. You can tune in from 7 to 8.
And you've missed a lot.
But that's okay because the show is currently being recorded and putting on the SMC Sports Twitter tonight.
And there's more to come, and let's get right into it.
And, of course, we'll be back on the air in January. And again, we talked about it for football before. This will probably be the last show we have of the regular season. I think the first show will probably be Wild Card Week.
Very nice.
So we'll get to kind of discuss the season, Week 17, Wild Card preview. But we'll stick on MLB first. And I want to get to some of the other moves across the country. And I think the first one, we already touched on David Price. We're not even going to mention that.
Yeah, that's fine.
We did that 2 weeks ago. That's old news. We'll start with the bidding war between LA and San Francisco that ended with Arizona RKOing both of them and grabbing Zach Greinke for 6 years. Now, let's go it on there. Where the hell did Arizona come from in this deal?
It was really interesting. I read an article on Bleacher Report. It was the 48 hours that landed Zach Greinke, and basically it started with
out of nowhere.
A couple phone conversations. It was kept very quiet, surprisingly.
Quiet.
And Tony La Russa, who's the new president of baseball operations there in Arizona, came in and kind of swung the deal in their favor. It's a great addition to a team that has a prolific offense that needs
pitching.
Starting pitching. They were 4 games out of the NL West with a month and a half to go. They were in it, and then they kind of folded at the end. They're well managed.
It was all divisional games. San Francisco
Right,
played a
and
little bit better at
they
the
just
end.
don't pitch as well.
And LA just ran away with the NL West, and the pitching just got overran by all the offense. So it makes sense.
They need to find some of the pitching. They have a good bullpen really already. Their bullpen isn't bad, but their lineup is dynamic. I think they're a well-managed ball club. They kept all their starting players intact, and they spend a lot on Greinke, who I think is worth it. They went out and they bring in Shelby Miller, who I'm a big fan of. They did trade the number 1 overall pick, the shortstop from Vanderbilt, Dansby Swanson. I know people want to argue over that. Here's my thing on this. Prospects are prospects until they come and prove it.
Right.
And I think if you're Arizona, right, and you have a Paul Goldschmidt and A.J. Pollock and all these different players who are really talented.
And Dansby Swanson still has 2 or 3 years to go.
2 or 3 years before he can contribute. Exactly my point. Now, to me, if you're going to spend all your money on Zach Greinke, that is a push your chips to the middle of the table kind of move. So I say you go for it and you bring in a Shelby Miller and see what you can do. The
Shelby
Dodgers,
Miller's another one, too. Yeah.
The Dodgers have gone backwards this offseason, all right? They lose Greinke to an in-division rival. They have not brought in an offensive weapon
They tried to get
join
Miller
their
and
lineup.
failed too.
Right. They tried for that. They didn't get the Shelby Miller deal done. They can't seem to figure anything out with Jose Fernandez. They've had to pull out on Aroldis Chapman because of his incident off the field.
Which was very unfortunate for both him and the Dodgers because he would have been a great fit for LA.
I want to see what the deal is. I don't know about that because Kenley Jansen's a good closer, and I think you're creating a Papelbon Storin situation
That's
overnight.
also true. My mistake. I didn't
That's
even
my
realize
whole
that.
thing.
Okay, so you're right on that one.
But the Aroldis Chapman situation's gone south. Now it comes out today that they're pulling out of the Sashi Iwakuma deal.
Oh, for God's sake.
So now they're getting no one at the moment.
And also forget that Don Mattingly walked at the beginning of the offseason
now,
too. So
they have amassed a ton of prospects, right? They have a clubhouse that's tearing itself apart from the inside, seemingly, with the whole Puig and Kershaw thing, and that's whatever. That's a whole other set of issues,
right?
But they have a ton of good prospects to begin with, and they go out and they make the deal with the White Sox yesterday in the 3-team deal. They land Trace Thompson.
How about the White Sox?
I really like this move from
real quick
Chicago
too.
standpoint.
I was getting an alert on ESPN. Rams have no plans to fire Jeff Fisher.
Yeah, I saw that before today.
And we'll see after tonight. But anyway,
but Todd Frazier goes to Chicago, and we can get into that move after we finish up with this NL West. But the Dodgers, they've gained a lot of prospects like Trace Thompson, their own guys in the system already. So maybe they use those as pawns to go out and bring in a piece. Maybe it is Jose Fernandez. They're going to need another starter, in my opinion, already.
the Dodgers.
Yeah. Switching from the Dodgers to San Francisco, they've done really well.
San Francisco, obviously, the Johnny Cueto deal.
But
I don't like the money. I like the signing.
I like the Samardzija deal a lot.
Samardzija I like. But sticking on Cueto for a minute, 6 years, 2022 option with the Giants. I like the signing. I think they need him. I don't like the money they gave him for an average season.
And an up and down postseason.
Yeah, now really the best game he had, I thought, was Game 2 of the World Series.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Thought he pitched a complete game. That was probably the best game he had all season.
He had a really good game against Toronto too, right?
That was a game he got destroyed in.
Okay. Oh wait, Houston.
He pitched a good game.
Game 5 and won, right? Game 5 and got the win. He was very good.
Game 5 was close though. That was the thing.
But he got the win.
Yeah. Game 3 in Toronto, and Toronto
he
had
was
him.
awful.
Toronto they put up 8-2 on him, and Toronto still won 11-8.
I know. Yeah.
That's when I knew Kansas City was winning the series. But his best game easily was Game 2 of the World Series. So to pay him that much for an average season, I'm sorry, it's like the David Price deal. How much is that going to get you?
The thing that I feel works in the favor of these two signings, and these are fly ball pitchers in Cueto and Samardzija. They don't really pitch to contact. They're strikeout kind of guys, and they're going to get hit hard some days. But they're now pitching in a big ballpark. It's AT&T out in San Francisco. It's a big place. It's kind of hard to hit the ball out unless you pull it down the right field line if the wind's blowing. So I like it. I think these are two good moves. The Giants still probably need an offensive weapon.
Yeah.
But this is a good start for them. And like I said, in a division now where the Dodgers seem to have been weakened, their offense is not what it was, their pitching staff is not what it was either, I think the Giants have a good chance here to be in a wild card hunt and be second place in this NL West.
Well, it is there every other year, so you know who's the favorite. My dad just texted me, he says savage. In other breaking news, Rams also have no plans for the Super Bowl either.
They don't either. This is a very good point. Well said.
One guarantee is the Rams will not be in this year's Super Bowl.
They are eliminated.
They
already.
are eliminated.
So yeah, I like the moves from San Francisco and Arizona.
I think they just spent too much money, but to get Cueto on that team and to get Samardzija, I like it. Just too much money.
Now let's get into this trade. It broke yesterday.
Todd Frazier to the White Sox.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yesterday
with
broke
Frazier and the Sox and Reds and the Dodgers hooking up on a deal. Listen, I can't speak for the prospects. I don't know a lot about the top MLB prospects. From what I hear Trace Thompson is a fantastic player, and that the White Sox gave up a really good player to get Frazier. I like Frazier a lot. They
who doesn't like
have
Frazier?
a really good lineup to begin with, and now they get him in there.
Oh, think about the 3 and 4 here. You got Abreu and you've got Frazier.
Right.
Like that. That's literally
and they
just,
have
that's
a couple,
almost a dream.
speedsters to get on base in front of them to set the table up. So I like it from an offensive standpoint. Their pitching staff leaves a little to be desired. Their bullpen isn't great either. They need to find some starters. Maybe they get in the market for another person. The thing that I heard today, I was watching. Mad Dog Chris Russo was on MLB Network. He has High Heat in the afternoon, and what he was saying
sounds just like a show too.
Absolutely right.
It's great.
Good afternoon, everybody. But the White Sox have 3 of the next top 50 picks in the draft next year.
Right.
So they feel they can replenish their system with those 3 picks if they make the right ones. So I understand where they're coming from. I like this move. If they can find some pitching in an AL Central where I don't really know what to make of the Tigers. They brought in Jordan Zimmerman, but they haven't done much else aside from that. Their bullpen still gives me some problems as well. The Twins had a nice step forward last year. So, the Twins haven't done much, though, to kind of retool the team. Mm-hmm. So that's a concern I have with them as well. Kansas City would still be my pick, but they've lost, they're probably going to lose Alex Gordon. There's a few pieces going in and out of this lineup. So it could be a little bit closer. If the White Sox can score, then I think, sure, they could absolutely win, but they need to find a pitcher or two that could, it doesn't have to be an ace. It could be Mike Leake. It just needs to be someone that can eat some innings and pitch well enough to win ball games. I like Robin Ventura as the manager of this team.
I always have.
I think he's pretty good. I know that, his record doesn't say that, but to me, I think he's a pretty decent manager that can, lead this ball club to some success, especially with this lineup. So I think if the White Sox can find some pitching along the way here, and maybe it's someone within their staff. I mean, they have some young guys in their staff that are waiting to develop, so maybe that's what they get. But Frazier and Abreu are just going to, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and you know what? And I like the move, and you're right. The White Sox need a lot more pitching.
See, the move that I would have liked Frazier to have done was, and obviously it was out of his control, but the move that I wanted to see made with him was the Indians. Because
you mentioned that the other day.
The Indians kind of have a nice blend of, good young talent and kind of guys who have been, journeymen, but they have a nice group. Michael Brantley's an awesome player, and they have a really good pitching staff with Carrasco and Salazar and Kluber, and their bullpen's solid too. So I thought if the Indians could have brought in a slugger like Frazier to go around those pieces that, provide some good offense already, I really thought Cleveland could do some damage in that AL Central if they could have brought in one of those pieces. Unfortunately, that deal didn't go through for them. But I think the White Sox have a chance here. They gave up a lot to get Frazier, but I think he's worth it, especially hitting with Jose Abreu as his partner.
Oh, right now? Absolutely. You just take a look at all these signs, and we'll get to a few more before we take a quick break. Jordan Zimmerman will go to Detroit. Yep. We mentioned Shelby Miller to Arizona. There's a lot more still on the table. Cespedes is still on the table. Murphy's on the
Chris
table.
Davis, after Baltimore offered 7 years at $150, he said no, and they said, fine, take a hike.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that leaves Davis.
How do you say no to 7 years and $150?
I know.
Hell, you have the Bartolo Colon contract. I would have said yes to that in a heartbeat. I would have been signing the contract without reading it.
Yeah.
But you say no to 7 years, $150 million? Like, what is wrong with these people?
The biggest problem, I would say Chris Davis would be a great fit for the Mets, but he's not an everyday first baseman. He's really a DH. I think
no,
he's
and
more
it
of an
sounds like we
American
can't
League
afford
fit.
him either.
No, yeah, I'm sorry,
7 years,
right.
150.
That
Now
price tag's
walk.
too high.
I'll walk. What's wrong with these players being so greedy?
I know.
I don't get it.
I get you. But I gotta be honest with you, from a Baltimore standpoint, I like it more to not bring him back. They have a good lineup as it is, and they need pitching. So they should invest the money in a couple of arms that could help them in the American League East, which is, listen, the Red Sox made some
which
good
they had
moves.
a shot to win last year,
They were in it, and then they collapsed as well. The AL East is up for grabs.
Hell,
as far as I'm
Boston was in
concerned.
it like they were last the entire season, but they were flirting with
They
maybe
finished-
6 or 7 games under 500.
They finished nicely. The Red Sox have had a good offseason. The Blue Jays, yes, they lost Price, but they've done some good things, and that lineup it's ridiculous. In
They'll
the
be
American
fine.
League East, where there isn't a ton of great pitching, they can win games. So, it's an interesting division. But Davis is out there. Cespedes is out there. You have Wei-Yin Shen, who says he wants $100 million. I'm not giving him $100 million at all. If you give him $100 million, I have a bridge to sell you in Alaska. But Wei-Yin Shen is still available. There's some interesting names that could help a ball club.
and it's
you've
only
got
December.
The specter of maybe a Jose Fernandez trade looming.
And it's only December, and how many big guys have been signed already?
If Jose Fernandez went to the right team, he'd tip the balance of power in that division. Personally, as a Yankee fan, I feel like if the Yankees went out and got him, he would put them right there with Toronto and Boston as being able to win the division. Because when the Yankees are healthy, they can actually score. But the problem is, we know Teixeira's going to break a nail and be out 10 days. And then when he comes back, he's going to roll out of bed and pull his hamstring. And then he comes back from that, he'll fall down the clubhouse steps. I mean, the list goes on. He's the new Carl Pavano. He can never stay on the field. Pavano never got on the field until the end of the contract, though, because whether it was a car accident or
I remember he was never around in 2006 either.
God.
I remember that, and everyone's like,
was
Carl Pavano. I'm like, Dad, who's Carl Pavano?
Terrible.
Because that was the time I was still trying to get into baseball. I'm like, Dad, who's Carl
I
Pavano?
remember they signed him and Jared Wright, and Wright was terrible. And they
And
sent
Pavano
him
never
home.
played.
And Pavano, he got a few starts in 06. He missed all of 07, came back in 08, and actually pitched okay, but they cut him loose. I remember he pitched a playoff game for the Twins against the Yankees. It was Game 3 of the 09 Division Series. And I'm like, I swear to God, if Carl Pavano beats the Yankees and helps lead the Twins to a comeback, I'm done. I give up.
You know what's funny? Carl Pavano, and my friends at home who are listening may understand this. Carl Pavano reminds me of this history teacher we had in high school. Like she would start out at the beginning of the year and all that stuff, and then she would and in the one year she had a baby, obviously that's the one exception. But then she would get hurt or whatever, something like that, or something would be with her head, and then she'd be gone the entire year. That's who Carl Pavano reminds me of. So whoever's listening at home who understands that, thank you. But yeah, like Carl Pavano, I never saw him around ever.
So with the whole Teixeira thing, what's disappointing for me is that Greg Bird's probably going to have to go down to facilitate, everyone. And I don't think they should move Bird to another position. I think that does him no favors. It stunts his growth. And he should go down because it does him no good to sit the bench here either. The first person that gets injured, he's coming back, and we know that someone's getting injured because either it's Teixeira or Beltran or Headley.
Oh, if there's one guy that can't
who.
stay healthy next to Teixeira, it's Beltran.
My biggest concern with this team going forward is, Alex Rodriguez was so good last year offensively, better than we thought for about 120 games, and those last 40 were a struggle, to say the least. So my concern is, are we going to get the last 50, 60 games that we saw from A-Rod? And if that's the case, they're going to have a hard time winning. I just think if they could get a pitcher like a Jose Fernandez or someone like that, then absolutely they could, go right back at it and take off again.
Yeah, I agree. But as for free
you know.
agency, there's still a lot to be decided. A lot of big names are still out there as you're putting your Notre Dame hat, circle or something.
I'm just holding it. Go ahead.
Yeah, holding
it's
it.
all right.
It's all good. It kind of distracted me. But, the Yankees made some moves. The Mets made some moves. Mets need to make one more move. We all know that. Arizona, again, and I'll say it on paper right now, in December, they're my pick to win the division.
That was a power play right
there. How
there.
the rest of the offseason works, I don't know. But again, L.A. and San Francisco in this huge bidding war for Zach Greinke, and Tony La Russa, the genius that he is, came in out of nowhere, swerved Greinke in talking with Arizona officials, and they signed him within 24 hours.
Yep.
It was unbelievable how they did it. I remember the breaking news coming to my phone. Zach Greinke signed 6 years, how many million, with Arizona, and I'm like, weren't we just talking about him being in a bidding war with L.A. and San Francisco?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like,
crazy.
Where did Arizona come from?
I mean, what I like about, from a San Francisco perspective, right, that was the money they were going to give Greinke. And they ended up using it to their benefit. They allocated the funds differently, and they got two good pitchers for the price of the one. Now, I'm not saying either one of them, Greinke would have had a great impact on their team. But I just, they did a good job of using the money they didn't get to use on Greinke. That's,
right.
That was a nice job done there. But
No,
they're a
absolutely.
well-run team. That's how they do business. They're very solid.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you look at Cueto and Samardzija, who end up going to San Francisco. Again, I think a little too much money for
Need another offensive piece in San Francisco.
You do. And
I would love to see Jay Bruce there. That would be an awesome fit.
You know what? Cincinnati's got a clean house, too, because their team's
think we're
really
heading
not going
towards
anywhere. I
that.
think we're heading towards that now with Frazier, who everyone was expecting to be the franchise of Cincinnati eventually, now out.
The word is that Brandon Phillips wants to play for Dusty Baker again, so maybe the Nationals. And they have some second base
I
issues.
heard Brandon Phillips possibly going to Washington. I heard San Francisco. I heard L.A. Actually, no, I'm sorry, not L.A., just San
A
Francisco.
bat he would help them.
He would help.
offensively, but Bruce would be the guy that if I'm the Giants, I'm after.
I would love to see Bruce in that outfield. In San
I mean, he'd be
Francisco.
hitting him into McCovey Cove. The
At
guys
least twice a week.
The guys in the paddle boats would have a blast with him.
Oh, he'd be hitting them in McCovey Cove at least 4 times a week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm with you
Absolutely
on
on
that.
that.
That's a fit.
So that's a good fit as well. And again, Brandon Phillips, Washington. I hate to have him in division rival, but he'd be
I
good
gotta be
there.
honest. I like him more in Washington because he brings a professionalism and a veteran
what Dusty
attitude,
Baker's looking
which
for.
is what they need. They need
Oh, yeah.
a culture change a bit there, and that's
You know what it is,
You know.
and I'm not saying that I approve of what Jonathan Papelbon did to Bryce Harper at the end of the season, but somebody had to.
Well, so listen. I didn't think Papelbon was 100% wrong. It would have
He
come.
wasn't wrong.
It would have come off better if it came from, perfect example, Brandon Phillips, who plays 160 games a year. Jonathan Papelbon was just traded there. He closes games.
Destroyed the season for Washington basically under his own power.
Splintered the clubhouse. He wasn't on the field all 9 innings, so let's not put it all on him.
Split the clubhouse.
But he did not help their relationship in the room. But the closer cannot be calling out the NL MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been called out because of the way he acts, and sometimes he's wrong.
And what a lot of people fail to realize was he didn't hustle on that play. So obviously the veteran in Papelbon is going to come out and be hey, buddy, why didn't you hustle?
It's not the only play he doesn't hustle on.
Exactly.
Let's not
pretend like Bryce Harper was just mad
Right.
at that one game because the Mets won the division the night before.
Let's not make it out to be that it's so cut and dry simple as he just didn't hustle that day. We've seen it before. He's not the only player that does it either. But something needed to be said. Papelbon took the initiative. Now, Papelbon in part is used to a very veteran environment. You think about the days in Boston, a David Ortiz, a Pedroia. Those guys are professionals. Those guys know how to win and play hard and act. Listen, you can say what you want about beer and chicken wings and all that, and they got the job done. Okay,
Yes,
and until they blew that wild card spot that year, no one cared what they did because they did that forever. Now it was only an issue then at that moment. So I just think it was taken a little bit out of context in that it was the right thing to do, but I do agree the closer should not be calling out the NL MVP.